Welcome to Underwater CSI International Revealed with your hosts, Senior Investigators Rich Morin and Ed Myron.
Welcome to Underwater CSI International Revealed. I'm your host, Senior Investigator Rich Morin, and with me as always.
And I'm your co-host, Senior Investigator Ed Myron.
Eddie, what's going on tonight, bud?
Well, Rich, another long week, but we're finally back, ready for another good episode. And I think this one's going to be a little bit more interesting, something a little bit different for everyone. And I think it's going to show the diversity of the team, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Just to give people a heads up, not only do we have the Underwater CSI, but also, owned multiple dive centers over the years. And we also did commercial work. So we had, different areas of the business. I kept telling everybody the name of the business should have been anything underwater for a buck.
Yeah,
is what it should have been, because that's about what it ended up. But tonight's show is going to be safety plan violation. That's going to be the name of tonight's show. And what happens when we have a team member, especially a senior team member, violates the safety plan? What kind of situation does that put us in overall? So, tonight's not really going to be about a crime scene investigation. It's going to be more of a commercial job that we got called out on. It was at a hydroelectric plant, and we got called out to basically go down and inspect the concrete shaft that went down a little over 130 feet, and then check the screen, clean the screen that goes into the intake pipe, and then any large debris that might be in there to remove it, if it happened to get through the screen system up top. But so that's what we're going to talk about tonight, what was involved in that, the amount of staff
right.
that we needed, specialized equipment, things like that.
Yep.
But
And then tonight's show, as always,
is brought to you by trailblazermedia.com. That's TRLBLZR media.com. When it comes to preserving those precious memories on a digital format, count on the professionals at Trailblazer Media. Let them develop a premier video telling your story that you'll be proud to share with your family and friends. It's a great family-run business. Leland and Rebecca Hall do a fantastic job. I mean, they are incredible photographers and videographers, but they can go ahead and help tell your story.
Yep.
And, put it in a digital format. So to contact them, once again, it's trailblazermedia.com. You can also email them at trlblzrmedia11@gmail.com. And you can give them a call at 615-547-8221. That's trailblazermedia.com. Just a shout out to Leland and Rebecca. We also like to shout out to our announcer, Randy Overton. He's the one that does the intro and outro with the heavy, deep voice. So if you ever need his services, just contact us at UWCSI@yahoo.com. Send me an email and I'll reach out to Randy and have him get in touch with you.
Yeah, we also want to give a shout out to our technical advisor, Bobby Falcon. Again, yeah, exactly. Who's again, who continues to help us and guide us through all the technical issues that we've had
and still helping us.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. And
a fellow diver, team member.
Yeah, team member. Also want to give a shout out to Robert Green, Bobby Green. Another
equipment specialist.
Yeah, another team member. So Robbie and I will be in the water here in a few days. So just want to say hello to Robbie.
All right, sounds great. All right, so let's get going with tonight's show.
Right.
What happened? We got a call, and the manager of the facility said that, and this is a privately owned hydroelectric plant. All right, the guy that owned it is out of Texas. So we got a call that, hey, we need it inspected. We need, the screen cleaned, so that we get good flow rate, et cetera. Now, the way it works is it's on a river, and just before it falls off a waterfall that drops down about 135 feet, At the top of the river, they divert some of the water into a holding area. And then they have a concrete shaft that's 30 feet across and it goes down to about 135 feet. And what happens is the water will just kind of set there. So when they open up the valve to open up the pipe at depth at 130 feet, all that head pressure, and there's about 90 pounds per square inch there, all that head pressure is just going to pour through this 20-inch pipe and start to spin the impeller. It looks like a big propeller from a ship, except instead of it being vertical, it's horizontal. And there's a shaft in the middle that goes up to the actual turbine itself. And it spins that like crazy. And that's what's going to help generate it. And then they have a discharge pipe at the bottom of the waterfall and it throws water out again. This 20-inch pipe, it throws it, geez, it's got to be 75 feet. It's tossing water. I mean, just the amount of pressure. So a lot of the water at that point from the river, the flow just continues to come right into that holding area and they can, produce a tremendous amount of electricity
Right.
on that.
And this is what they would consider a gravity fed, right?
Yeah, correct. There's no pumps or anything else. It's just the water itself sitting in that concrete shaft itself, which is, cylinder basically, just coming down, all that water trying to go through a 20-inch pipe, all at the same time, just throws a tremendous amount of water flow. And the water flow continues to go right through, and the turbine blade happens to be kind of like in the middle of it, spins the heck out of it, and then discharges the rest of the water downstream.
Right.
Yeah, so it works out really well. Very, it's not very expensive to run. It's expensive to get it set up and stuff like that. But once it's up and running, it's there's certainly maintenance on it, but it's certainly a moneymaker though.
Right. So then now exactly what did they want done? I mean,
well, first of all, what I want to do is I want to go over and take a look.
Yeah,
before we commit to the job. So we take a ride over there and we decide that we're going to go ahead and do an exploratory dive, just to check the outside. What we didn't realize was when they have to dewater the plant in order to change valves or something like that, there can't be any water in this concrete shaft. Right. So they have to dewater it. In order to do that, this shaft is approximately 15 feet or so underwater as far as the top of it, because it goes into a holding area that's above it. So, so the top of the actual shaft itself is about 15 feet underwater. Well, it's got this enormous concrete stopper, almost looks like one of those rubber stoppers that you'd put in your sink drain to stop water from flowing, right? Except this is made out of concrete. It's enormous, heavy as anything. And it's held on one of the walls with 8 hinges. These big, massive hinges, these big, giant bolts that hold it in. I don't know if we got a picture of that, Ed.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
I just want to show that flat spot right there so people can kind of get an idea.
So
let's all right, so just above where you can first start to see the water toward the top of the screen, that's where it's been diverted as far as from the river goes. So all this water is just kind of waiting to come in. And then there's a little walkway across this little like half of a hexagon or pentagon here on the bottom. Well, that flat wall that's toward the middle of your screen, I don't know if you can put an arrow on that, Ed. That flat wall right there, that's where those 8 hinges are. And this cover is this big, massive circle that covers the shaft. So it goes right there where you've got the little hand going there. Right. So this is open now. Right. So what we did is we went over and we inspected the hinges themselves. And out of 32 bolts holding this concrete cover up, all right, 24 bolts were broken. All right. And 2 hinges, not only did they have broken bolts, but were cracked. So
and that's
I don't know what was.
Yeah. And that covers up right now, correct?
Correct. It's kind of just up on a little bit of an angle. But what I heard from the workers though was when they're at full flow, that cover will just basically shake back and forth, vibrate like crazy, and throw like big waves at the top of this holding area. Now, where you can see that little walkway area that goes across,
Right here.
yeah, right there. Those are actually like screened in areas that they're grates is what they're not screened, but they're grates that go down, and that helps prevent any large debris from coming in. Logs and stuff like that. So
Right.
that has to be cleaned out periodically. What they do is they've got a big, they call it a long stick, basically a big backhoe, and they'll reach in there with a long stick in it, and they'll clean all that out,
Right.
etc. So that's got to be done on a fairly regular basis. But so the area that we're going to be working in though is in that first area where the flat wall is.
Yeah, right here.
So yeah, so as soon as we noticed all those broken bolts and hinges, it was like, holy mackerel, this is extremely dangerous. Now on top of the cover, they've got a big giant eyelet that they can use to basically lift with a crane. If they have to, if they got to dewater, basically what they're going to do is they're going to lower it into place and then pick it back up again. And it's got a locking mechanism on it. But again,
So-
even the locking mechanism, it allowed this thing to vibrate horribly when they were at full water flow in there. So some issues.
Right. Now, so you take a look here. Now, is this when do you start to determine, how much personnel you need, how much equipment you're going to need to actually, do the actual job?
Well, at first, if everything was good, if all the hinges were good, all the bolts were good, et cetera, I mean, this could have been a 3 or 4 man job
Right.
to come in and get this done. And now all of a sudden it's, we definitely have a safety issue here.
Right.
We're going to put a diver down in that shaft. And, what happens when the diver's down there for, this thing breaks free and next thing you know, it comes crashing down and closes off the only way out
Right.
of the shaft itself. So that's going to be a big concern. So,
Now, you
I'm
also
sorry, go ahead.
mentioned, I'm sorry, you also mentioned a crane. So if there's a crane on site, and as you just said, this is a safety issue now with all these bolts and these hinges damaged. So if a diver does enter the shaft, well, what about a crane on site?
Yeah, can you go to? I think we have another shot of this, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Can we? Let me see what that one looks like
Sure.
here.
We zoom in here a little bit.
Okay.
There you
Now,
go.
if you can see the white water toward the top
Yeah,
of
right
the
here.
photo, yeah, that's where the waterfall is right there. I mean, that's dropping down 135 feet. The discharge pipe comes downstream actually a little bit further. You can't see it right here where it's at. The picture's not
Right.
big enough, but this gives you a little bit better idea of the water being diverted into and then the holding area itself. So that just gives you a little bit better angle, but you can see the amount of water flow going there. So it's tremendous. So it's not like they can just, hey, remove the valve inside and open up the pipe and I can squeeze through and, hey, like that. It doesn't work that way. As soon as they
Exactly.
open up that valve, that water's going to start going down. But there's a major concern. So what could have been a relatively, easy job, may have taken a couple hours to get all done completely. Now all of a sudden it's turning into a much bigger project
Right.
because we're not going to send anybody in there in order to, clean the screen,
Sure.
without some backup on it. Now, normally we would send 2 divers down, but the concern that we've got right now is if for some reason everything goes bad and this cover comes down, we put 2 divers in there, we've got twice the concern.
Sure.
If we put a single diver with a safety diver outside of the shaft itself, basically watching this cover, making sure they can still see it, get into like a fin pivot position. And all they're doing is just going to focus on this cover until that diver comes back from the job.
Right.
So if the cover went down for whatever reason, they can notify a second safety diver who's on the surface looking down at the first safety diver, right? Who could then alert the surface support team. Now, the owner did not want to pay to have a crane on site, but he agreed to have a crane on standby.
Okay.
But it would be, probably a good hour to an hour and a half plus, to get the crane in there and get it set up and get it hooked up, et cetera. And
Right.
that's where our surface support team would come in. They would go ahead and hook up the crane in order to lift that cover off, so the diver inside can get out. So that's what we'd be looking at.
Right. But that's when you think about that, I mean, that's a lot of valuable time if it's going to take that long to get on site. And you've seen these crane operators where you gotta set up the crane, and then you gotta get it in position, and then you gotta drop it down. I mean, that's valuable time when there's someone's life involved there.
Absolutely. Now there was a crane on site, but I think Fred Flintstone uses crane on the Flintstones there. The dinosaur was getting a little thin. This thing was all overgrown all around it. The guy said it ran, but I wouldn't have trusted it at all. I
Right.
mean, even trying to get the thing started. So we wanted something from Roselle's to be standing by. Roselle Industries, big crane company, and construction company. So they would definitely have the equipment that we would need in order to
Right.
make this work.
So if all the hinges were bad and all the bolts were broken, or close to all the bolts broken, so can you imagine the shape that the crane was in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now what we have to do is now we have to put a line going from outside the shaft itself, going down into the shaft, and then put a piece of fire hose, or, cut up piece of fire hose over the rope itself, where it's going to go over the outside of the concrete, the lip of the concrete shaft. So in case this cover comes down, it can't cut the rope.
Right, it's not going to separate. Right.
Yeah, it's not going to sever the rope on us. And then from there, we got to put hang tanks down there. Got to put additional air.
Right.
So we want to go, with a relatively high O2 level on that. So we're going to put nitrox down there at different levels. But so we're going to put tanks at 70 feet, which is going to be the first deep stop, the Haldanian stop, and then we're going to put them again at 40 feet, and then 30, and then 20. Right, is where our last tanks are going to be. But we plan on, we've got a single diver down there with twin steel 120s on their back, high pressure, going down with roughly 3,800 pounds of pressure in it. And then we have all these additional tanks that are going to be there with regs already set on them. So all they have to do is put the reg in, turn the tank on. They've got more gas to breathe. So we've got enough air now to last this diver ballpark about 8 hours.
Right.
In order to get this cover off of this diver who's down there.
Yeah, if that were to occur, right? Yeah.
If it were to occur. So, it's going to be a lot more manpower now, because we're going to need a surface support team. We got 2 equipment handlers or technicians rather up on top side. We've got a safety diver on the surface, a safety diver underwater, and then we have a surface team of guys in their wetsuits with just mass snorkel fins that they're going to do so they can hook up the cables if they need to with assistance from the safety divers.
Right.
They can bring the cables out, stuff like that, stabilize everything while it's being hooked up to the cover itself.
Right.
So much bigger team at this point now. Plus we have a surface supervisor that's top side that's going to coordinate, getting the safety equipment there, et cetera.
Right. Well, this goes from a call that comes in and says, I just need some inspection and something simple done, to a review of just a certain area where the cover is, to find out this is not just 2 divers on scene. This is a whole entire operation now.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, the owner reached out to me before we got started and was having a fit. He's like, last year I had 1 diver go down. The guy was all by himself, went down for $250, went down and cleaned it out and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that guy was an idiot. I said, because, obviously there wasn't any inspection done on the bolts or the hinges. I said, this thing is ready to crash down. I said, you got 8 bolts holding this thing on total.
Right.
And, out of 32 that was originally designed for.
Right.
I said, everything is busted. And I said, so obviously there's been 0 service work on this cover at all. It's never been inspected. I said, so it's a good thing we did inspect it. And I said, now that you're aware of that, if I find out that you did send another diver down there by himself and something does happen, I says, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right.
I says, because, you're going to be an accessory to this because you knew what was wrong, but yet you basically risked this person's life by
Right.
putting them down there.
Exactly.
And, you would have cost this person their life because they wouldn't have had any of the safety precautions or extra
Right.
tanks or anything else.
Right.
My other concern, Ed, was if this comes crashing down, is it going to stay together? Or is the cover going to break up? And if it
Exactly.
breaks up, all that concrete is going down that shaft.
Right.
So who's ever down there could be severely injured or killed pretty
Right.
easily.
And the helmets that we wear are not for falling concrete, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
we wear our safety helmets for a reason, but
Yeah.
not for big pieces of concrete falling down a shaft. Right?
Absolutely.
So I mean, you're right. I mean, somebody's life either severely injured or killed.
Yeah. So the day of the operation, we show up and, again, we meet at the classroom first and we go over our safety briefing, et cetera, what everyone's role is going to be, the responsibilities, et cetera, who's going to be the person going in. I was going to be the person going into the shaft itself.
Right.
One of our senior investigators who was with me for 16 years.
Yep.
Long time, very good friend of mine, still a good friend of mine, very good friend of mine. I talk to him all the time, but he was going to be my safety diver. And then another one of our team members, not a senior investigator, but another one of our team members that have been with us for a long time, was going to be the second safety diver. And then our two guys in the snorkeling gear. And then we had a surface supervisor, which basically was another senior investigator up top. So everybody was given their assignment. Everybody agreed what was going to go on.
Right.
Our equipment specialists, they were going to go ahead and set up the line so that we had the tanks all hung at all the right depth levels and stuff, and we had the right gases, that were there. It's up to me though to make sure that that's that I analyze those gases, mark those tanks, and that those are the tanks that are going to be set at the specific depths.
Right.
So I got to just double check all that before we set it down into the water. Make sure that the fire hose length is long enough to where it's not going to be severed should this cover come crashing down, et cetera.
Right.
So anyway, so we're all set, ready to start the job. And, everyone's in place. I went ahead and got into the shaft itself. And it's not a small shaft. I mean, it was roughly, I want to say it was 25 feet across, maybe. I think it was 25 feet, maybe 30, but I think it was 25. And so it's big, big concrete silo basically, but underwater, underground. And so I start my descent and I head on down and I'm inspecting the walls and I'm inspecting if there's any debris, et cetera. It's a good thing we didn't find anything big, logs
Right.
or anything, even though we brought bags with us to lift them out of the way in case they happen to be down there, but nothing got through. So I get down there and I, locate the screen on the side wall, which is quite large. And I clean all that off. I've got brushes with, dog clips, the sliding dog clips that I got clipped onto my D-rings on my doubles.
Right.
And so I take brushes off and I'm cleaning the screen all off. I mean, it was filthy after a year. It's, gets a lot of algae and stuff like that built up on it.
Silt and everything that's around.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the hydro plant does have some dry times also where there's not enough water, adequate water coming down. So there's downtime that they have. So that's when the algae will build up.
Right.
So anyway, I, get it all cleaned up and I'm, doing my final inspection, looking around and I'm kind of, as I'm ascending, I'm kind of doing a spiral as I'm coming up, checking the outside walls, looking for any excessive cracks or damage that might have been done by prior debris coming down, et cetera.
Right.
And I get to my first stop, my Haldanian stop at 70 feet, which is basically half my max depth. And I'm doing my first stop there, and I look up, not very far above me, about 60 feet of water, is my safety diver.
Right. Now, where again, explain where the safety diver was supposed to be.
Outside the shaft in a fin pivot position, right? Focusing on that cover and only concentrating on that cover.
Right. So now there's
So
two
if something happened, that safety diver could alert the person on the surface, who could alert the equipment techs and alert the supervisor to get the plan in action.
right. But now there's two divers in the shaft with
Yes,
no one watching the cover
right.
except for guys in mask, fins, and snorkel at the surface.
They're not in the water yet, though.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they're only sitting on the edge, in case they don't even have their fins on yet, because they're only there if they needed to assist with the crane with the hookup on the cover.
Right.
So
That's
they're
correct.
not in the water. We don't want them in the water in case this thing went down.
Right.
So the only other person is the other safety diver that's on the surface, who's supposed to be watching the first safety diver
Right.
on it, right? Who now they can't see that safety diver, and it's going like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
know where
What's
he
going
is.
on?
So they're just kind of looking around for him. And so I I was a little upset, I can tell you that, because you can imagine what's going through my mind now. I
Right.
mean, yeah. So some of the first thoughts going through my mind was, first of all, what's he doing? What are you doing down here? And he's just kind of looking around the shaft itself. And so immediately I'm thinking, all right, if something happens now, that cuts our air in half.
Right.
That cuts our time in half.
Right.
Right. I mean, I've been in a lot of hairy situations over the years. I've been in sewer lines and water towers and sucked into a 20-inch pipe. And, I've been in just muck and buried in silt, 15, 16 feet under chocolate pudding silt.
Right.
I mean, I've been in with my feet tied upside down so people can, like I can get pulled out. But I've been in some hairy situations. So I knew that if something happened, more than likely I would probably stay fairly calm, throughout the whole thing, conserving
Right.
my air, et cetera, knowing that my team, my well-trained team that follows directions, is topside doing everything they can to get this cover off of me.
Right.
It's not like, well, it's lunchtime.
Yeah. Oh, let's do lunch, and we'll be back in time to
Yeah.
get Rich out.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't get my 15-minute break. So,
Right.
so anyway, but now all of a sudden, here I've got another senior investigator down there, and this cuts everything in half now.
Right.
So we go from, roughly 8 hours to not even 4 hours, because I've got twin steel 120s on my back. All that was factored in. He's
Right.
got a single steel 100 on his back.
Exactly.
Right. I got twin steel 120s. So this just, just ruins everything. So now we're looking at, instead of 8 hours, now we're looking at 5 hours, 4 hours, possibly less, if he starts getting a little high anxiety.
Right. If something does
starts,
happen,
yeah, and starts
if
to
he
breathe
does-
heavy.
if he starts to panic or something, it's going to turn ugly quick.
Yeah. So, after my stop at 70, I start slowly ascending, and I meet up with him, and I'm just kind of shaking my head, I can't believe that you're in here.
Right.
And he's just kind of, looking, hey, this is great,
Yeah. I'm in the shaft with you.
Yeah, I'm in the shaft with you. So I finished, my stops. He, he does this. He was required to do a safety stop, so he stayed with me the whole time, though I did the rest of my stops,
Right.
and which was even bad. Also, I wanted him to go up and do a safety stop and get out of there and
Right.
continue to watch from the outside. And
Exactly.
he ended up staying with me, and I kept telling him, no, you go up.
Right.
And no, he just. So we finally get to the surface, and
So let me stop right there.
yeah,
So
okay.
what were some of the things going through your mind at this point? You're telling him to go up. He's already in the shaft where he's not supposed to be.
Violated a huge safety protocol.
Yeah, the safety protocol is now out the window, right?
Yeah.
So,
and you know how I am about that.
uh,
That is a pet peeve of mine. We don't
Right.
violate standards. We don't violate safety. We follow standards of safe diving practices.
right,
I am just a stickler with that.
right. So So all these things got to be going through your mind, right? You got to be thinking, okay, he's violated everything that we talked about before going to the job. And again, you're telling him, okay, you go up, let me do my stops. You go up and get out of the shaft in case something does happen. He basically says, no, I'm going to come up with you.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Here was one of the problems, that he was not the diver with me when we went to inspect the hinges,
right,
you know. So he didn't see the 2 cracked hinges. He didn't see the 24 broken or missing bolts on it. You know, he was there during the briefing and we explained everything and where the hinges were, were broken and the bolts that were missing and stuff. And, that was a huge safety concern. But, you know, I don't know what was going through his head, but, it's something that I couldn't tolerate, and just
right,
could not tolerate. 16 years together, um, working his way up through the ranks and you know, once we got to the top, he did not have an
right.
excuse. There was no reason for him to have been there, and so we parted ways.
Yeah. So that's, I was going to, so when you got to the surface and then is that when uh, you basically were like, okay, how did you handle it? So once you got to the
Well, I
surface,
didn't handle it there. I
right,
handled it in private. I had him
right,
come into the office
yeah.
and handled it there.
So that was so the
Well, one of the
repercussion,
things is when I brought him into the office, I wanted to first of all see his reaction. I wanted to see how he handled it, whether or not there was any remorse. Um, and rather than make it, blase thing. Well, nothing happened. Well, we hope that nothing ever happens, but it doesn't mean that we stop coming up with our safety plan and following our plan.
right?
Right. But let me add something though, Ed.
Sure.
2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the owner that the cover fell
Yeah.
and they needed somebody to come and get the cover off of there and, come up with an idea to remount the cover, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
2 weeks later, it
Yeah.
broke
So
and fell,
so
closed off that hole.
just think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reality of it, right?
I think it was 12 days actually.
But again,
But
that's the reality of it,
yeah.
right? I mean,
So 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it was 2 weeks later,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah. So I was very, very upset, very mad at first, trying not to, you know, bray anybody in front of the rest of the staff.
right,
I think everyone could tell that I was a little upset, but, the job was done and, let's wrap it up and get out of here.
right,
And then the following day I had him come in and we had a talk and I said, we can't do this anymore.
right,
And, you,
but it,
you put everybody in jeopardy here. You put my life for sure, your life for sure. Um, and, everybody else is going to be going crazy. You're the senior diver there. You're
right,
the one that's going to call the shots as far as getting everything set up and getting the cover off of me so that I could squeeze out of there.
right,
But instead you're, off on a sightseeing tour, where
right,
he should have been doing his job, because he was bored, wanted to go down and see what it looked like in the shaft itself.
right,
But yeah, so I mean, it's something that's not tolerable. You set your safety plan for a reason. You always have a contingency, a backup, and regardless, he violated. Even if we had a contingency, it wouldn't have included him coming in there.
right,
So it's it was something that I had to think about seriously, and I I mean I'm a stickler when it comes to safety protocol.
right. But it also
Safety
shows,
for the dive team.
Right. It also shows that no one's above it, right?
That's for sure.
So anyone on the team can basically you lose your job, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what
I
it
mean, he
comes
had been
down
with
to,
me for, like I said, 16 years, hundreds of cases,
right?
hundreds of cases.
So nobody, there's no leeway for safety violations like that.
Right.
So it just goes to show that those types of things can't be tolerated because again, how many times have you said it's when we're underwater, you're wearing life support system, and if those things fail, lives are
You
in
know,
jeopardy.
in this case here, everybody had a job to do.
Right,
All right. Everybody needs to do that job. They need to be where they're supposed to be, et cetera. I mean, people's lives are at stake.
right,
And it's all it took. I mean, like we were talking about before, if it was 2 weeks later, could have been a whole different story.
correct. Yeah.
But all right. Well, let's mention next show,
Yeah,
season 2, episode 4. This is going to be probably a double feature here. We're gonna
this is going to be a two-parter, right?
yeah, two-parter. Yeah, it's going to be a long one. So is the one after that. That's going
Right.
to be a long one also. That'll be a two-parter. But this next one, we're going to take you internationally
Yep.
to South America, where we were down there doing a job. Actually, we were down there doing an insurance job,
Right.
and something else came up, and we found our team in a lot of danger. We were wondering whether we were going to get out of this country or not.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that's going to be a nail biter right there. So we
Nail
hope
biter
you can,
then.
yeah, it was a nail biter then, that's for sure. We ended up sneaking you out to Europe. We got the rest of the team back to the U.S. I ended up in the Bahamas, and eventually we all made our way back. From Europe, you came to the Bahamas, and
Right.
then we met up there with another individual from Europe,
Yep.
and then he headed down to South America, and you and I headed back stateside.
Right.
But it's going to be a nail biter. So we hope that you stay tuned,
Yep.
and looking forward to it. Buddy, as always, it's great working with you. I'm sorry we're 1,000 miles apart now, but this partial retirement stuff is for the birds. Wish we were
Yep.
back working full time on this still, but
Yeah, I know.
hopefully in the near future we can get back at it full time. We'll see what happens. We thought the
Yeah,
TV show was going to allow that to happen, but
Yeah.
But,
We'll make it all happen,
yeah,
with the support of our listeners and everything, and you know, it'll happen. We'll put it all together.
all right, pal. Well, on behalf of myself, Senior Investigator Rich Morin,
And myself, Senior Investigator Ed Myron.
thanks for listening to Underwater CSI International Reveal.
Thank you.
On behalf of everyone at Underwater CSI International, Revealed, this is Randy Overton. Thank you for tuning in. Underwater CSI International Revealed is for entertainment purposes only. The information revealed is not intended, nor is it a substitution for the proper training and education received from a qualified dive professional. Certain episodes are loosely based on and may be modified from actual cases. Some episodes are fictional based, featuring procedures that could possibly be used by underwater investigators. Resemblance to destinations, actual cases, or persons living or deceased is purely coincidental.